And welcome to the Community Science webinar, Overcoming Barriers to Optimize Health Literacy Programs, Innovative Strategies from the Field. It is now 2 o'clock and we are ready to get started. I am Oscar Espinoza, a Community Science Senior Associate, and I will be your moderator today. For those of you who are not familiar with Community Science, we are a research and evaluation firm in the Washington, D.C. area. We work with governments, foundations, and nonprofit organizations on solutions to social problems through community and other systems changes. Since 1997, our objective has been to develop the knowledge necessary to address social problems in a way that benefits all communities. So today, I'm excited to be with you on this webinar because we're going to be able to hear directly from 3 individuals who have been in the front lines working with underserved populations with low health literacy. Our goal for this webinar is to not just tell you about the strategies that are being used to communicate with low health literate populations, but to also demonstrate some of them for you. So we have the treat today. We're going to be getting a live performance of a theater-based communication strategy. And we also have a video of a web novella that we will be playing for you. We have been experiencing a lot of internet traffic, and so you might experience a delay in watching the video, but we can always provide you with the link so that you can see the full video on your own. Our hope is that by sharing how these strategies were conceived and applied, it will spark ideas for overcoming the barriers that we all face in implementing health literacy interventions. Okay, so first I just want to remind ourselves of why health literacy is so important. You probably wouldn't have joined us today if you didn't already know, but studies have shown that only about 12% of American adults are proficient in health literacy and numeracy, meaning the average American has trouble looking at for relevant information within a document, integrating multiple pieces of information across documents, or locating abstract quantitative information and using it to solve multi-step problems. Also, rates of health literacy are typically lowest among the most vulnerable populations, including racial and ethnic minorities, non-native English speakers, and those with low socioeconomic status. So, low health literacy has been linked to many poor health outcomes, including shorter life expectancy. It also contributes to racial and ethnic health disparities. So improving health literacy among not only individuals, but communities really does have the potential to be the tide that rises all boats. Focusing interventions on the most vulnerable populations could significantly improve health outcomes for the country at large. And also, last month was with Health Literacy Month, and you might have noticed there was a report that was published that found that half of US consumers are unable to navigate the complexity of the healthcare system on their own, and that this low level of health system literacy can cost the industry an estimated $4.8 billion on an annual basis. So health literacy is critical to improvements in health of our nation. So today we have 3 presenters. First, we have Ms. Naisley Tapia. She's an outreach worker for the North Carolina Farm Workers Project. And Ms. Tapia uses the popular education insurance utilization training program. This program trains seasonal farm workers to understand how to enroll in health insurance and how to access needed care. The program shows farm workers who are eligible for health insurance how to sign up for it and access services via a theater and game-based series of activities. Ms. Tapia is going to demonstrate one of the dramatic skits that she uses to engage with farm workers and convince them ultimately that they should access health services. Our second presenter, we're going to be hearing from Sabrina Kirch-Rossi. She's the assistant professor and director at the Health Literacy Leadership Institute at Tufts University. And Ms. Kirch-Rossi is a health literacy education and evaluation consultant who developed the Who Can You Trust curriculum. This program trains youth to find credible online health information and receive instruction on how to share that information, and therefore train elders, adults in their community on how to access that information. She will be telling us how this intergenerational train-the-trainer model can help you reach your target audience in a rural setting, with a limited budget. And finally, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Andrade. She's an assistant professor at the Milken Institute of Public Health at the George Washington University. And Dr. Andrade, through the Avances Center for the Advancement of Immigrant and Refugee Help, helped develop the Victor and Erica web novella. This multimedia product is used to deliver prevention messages on substance abuse, sexual risk, and interpersonal violence to Latino youth in a culturally relevant and engaging manner via YouTube videos. So you're going to get to see what this web novella looks and sounds like. And unfortunately, we have been experiencing some lags. There's a lot of folks on the internet. So we will also share a direct link to the video so that you can see it at another time. So before we begin, a few housekeeping notes so that you can get the most out of this webinar. All participants will be muted to avoid any interruptions or echoes. As you have questions during the webinar, please write them out in the question or the chat function on the upper right-hand side. During the Q&A portion of our webinar at the end, once all presenters have spoken, we will address the questions that you include in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many of those as possible. Following the Q&A, you're going to be redirected to a webinar assessment form. We would really appreciate it if you take the time to provide us with feedback. It's very short, will only take a few minutes, and will help us to improve future webinars that we have planned. One final note before we hear from our first presenter: the strategies that you're going to be hearing about today, they haven't been rigorously evaluated, but they're very practical solutions that our presenters have used to overcome significant challenges in the communities where they have implemented their projects. They do have some form of evaluation that has given them evidence that they are useful and that they're worth replicating, but there is no formal evaluation of those. Okay, with that said, it is my pleasure to introduce our first presenter, Naisley Tapia from the North Carolina Farm Workers Project. Ms. Tapia, are you with us?
Insurance.
Ms. Tapia,
good afternoon, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
I'm here to present about Popular Education Insurance Utilization Training Program, and I'm from the North Carolina Farm Workers Project. Next slide, please. The North Carolina Farm Workers Project was founded in 1994 to promote the organization of farm workers, help them find solutions to the problems, and give them the tools to better their working conditions, living conditions, and health. We are located in Benson, North Carolina. We have a few programs that are currently using Popular Education: the Health Program, Promotores Program, Project of Healthy Foods for Diabetics, and the Outreach and Enrollment Program. Next slide, please. The purpose of us using Popular Education with farm workers is to inform them and help them educate about their rights and responsibilities. By providing them with easy-to-use tools, help them find solutions and resources to resolve their own problems. Next, I will share with you a quick version of an easy-to-follow guide to prepare a lesson that can be adapted not just to farm workers and health insurance, but to any type of audiences and any subjects that need to be taught. Next slide, please. So this is the strategy that we use in order to work out popular education. We're going to start from a step across. A step, time, objective, activities, person responsible, and resources. Then we have investigation, which is where we assess our audience. The objective is to find out or investigate what the audience know about the subject in question. Investigate what they want to know about the subject. Then we have the activities, which is an icebreaker or a fun game. And in this case, I have the example of a cabbage. It's writing questions about the subject in papers, make a cabbage ball, and then throw it at each other. The person who catches the ball says their name and answer the question. That is not a right or wrong answer. The person responsible will be the facilitator, which is conducting the session, and a support person will be taking notes and analyzing the answers. The resources will be the materials that we will use in order to carry out our activities. In this case, will be paper and markers. Then we go down to reflection. The objective of the reflection is to discuss about past experiences, identify patterns from past experiences, and provide examples so everybody knows about the subject. And then we come to the activities, which can be a group discussion or a dramatization that will help the audience understand more about the subject. And that's what we're gonna do following next. The person responsible for this will be the facilitator and the support person to take notes and analyze the answers. And we also have the resources. For this, we will need the facilitator, volunteers to present the dramatization. And then we have the theory, where the facilitator actually answers any questions that they might have. And then we have the action, which is the action plan. That's when the group decides what steps are next as a group. In this case, will be who will enroll in a health plan with dates and location, and so on. Next slide, please. Next. So, some of the challenges that our audience go through is that they have low level of formal education, lack of information, language barriers, and physical and social isolation. Many workers are ignorant of their rights and responsibilities. So we opted for using this method because from past experiences, we have learned that sometimes they don't like to read, they do not have the time, or they're just not interested in reading a whole bunch of papers, which brings them with consequences of not being able to enroll, or their premiums get canceled and their tax declarations were not filed properly. So next, we're gonna see or present a brief dramatization that relates to the first visit at a camp at the beginning of the season. Next, please. Okay.
Domingo por la tarde. Es un día soleado y agradable y ya todos se preparan para trabajar lunes por la mañana. Todos están tratando de preparar el lonche para mañana y se mueven tan rápido en la cocina que Ramón se rebanó un dedo mientras corta su cebolla. ¡Ay, ay, mi dedo! ¡Me corté mi dedo! ¡Me corté mi dedo!
¿Cómo? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Cómo te lo cortaste?
Estaba partiendo cebolla y se me fue el cuchillo. ¡Ay, mi dedo! ¡Se me va a caer mi dedo! Tómala que se desmaya Ramón.
Ramón, despierta, despierta.
Sangre por todos lados y los compañeros están asustados y en pánico al ver tanta sangre en la mesa de la cocina. Entonces, un compañero llama al patrón para llevar a Ramón a emergencias porque los trabajadores no tienen transporte.
Déjame le hablo al patrón. Rin, rin, rin. Patrón, tenemos una emergencia. Ramón se cortó el dedo. Está sangrando demasiado y la mitad de su dedo está colgando.
Llega el patrón, no hay necesidad de darle la dirección, pues él provee a los trabajadores vivienda durante la temporada. Se suben al carro y se van con rapidez al cuarto de emergencia. Una vez que llegan al hospital, el patrón tendrá que registrar a Ramón porque las enfermeras están tratando de salvarle el dedo en el cuarto de atrás. Ya en el hospital, Ramón se entera que tendrá una cirugía en su dedo y entonces llega la pregunta del millón.
¿Cuál será su forma de pago el día de hoy?
¿Quién es responsable por este cobro? A, Ramón. B, el patrón. C, compensación al trabajador. ¿Y por qué? En nuestras posibles respuestas, sin seguro, el patrón, porque él nos provee un seguro para accidentes, está dentro del contrato. Porque estamos en su casa o su propiedad. Al recibir estas respuestas, es importante aclarar que el seguro, compensación del trabajador que ofrece el patrón, cubre accidentes dentro y fuera de su propiedad durante horas de trabajo solamente. Por lo tanto, es importante inscribirse en un seguro médico para cubrir todas las demás necesidades o emergencias. Con seguro, mi seguro médico, porque estábamos fuera del horario de trabajo. Usualmente recibimos estas respuestas de trabajadores que ya han tenido seguro médico en el pasado y se abre otra oportunidad para hablar de los beneficios del seguro médico y a los nuevos o que no han tenido cobertura en el pasado para que se inscriban.
As you can see, right here at the dramatization, as you can see in the dramatization, you can see that we have the investigation, reflection, theory, and plan of action. We have open questions to the group so they can discuss and come to conclusions. So the tips and lessons learned that we have had is that we can share with you is that in order for you to get a successful class or session, the first thing is to gather the audience. In this case, is arrive to the camp and become familiar with the workers or the audience. Find a convenient time. In our case, we usually do it over dinner or on the weekends. Win their trust. The icebreaker, it works. Introduce a subject. How do we do that? By discussion group or fun activities with interaction. Dramatization, as we just show you an example and respond to questions as they arise. At the end, we come to a conclusion as a group where we come to a plan of action and we all together agree on how to do the next step. That way they find solutions to their problems and they find the resources available in their community. Next slide, please. So if you need any more information or you have any questions, you have our contact information in the screen. You can feel free to contact us. Most or everything in our curriculum is in Spanish, but we'll be more than happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naisli. That was great. So next is Ms. Sabrina Kirch-Rossi. As I mentioned, assistant professor and community medicine director at the Health Literacy Leadership Institute at Tufts University. So Sabrina, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to present on who can you trust a health literacy curriculum. So the goal of the curriculum is to improve health literacy skills among youth and young adults and to increase community access to accurate and reliable health information for informed and empowered decision making. To achieve these goals, the curriculum is best implemented through collaboration between community organizations, local schools, adult education programs, and public libraries that offer free and public access to computers and the internet. And community collaboration is a very important strategy for going through kind of existing channels. So you're not asking people to do extra work, you're actually going through existing programs. The curriculum was developed in Oxford County, Maine by the River Valley Healthy Communities Coalition, working with local teachers and librarians in middle and high schools, as well as young adults and non-formal adult education programs. The curriculum includes 3 one-hour lessons and an intergenerational project-based learning activity that encourages the students to share what they've learned with others in the community, especially older adults. And this is another really critical strategy, is this train the trainer of the youth reaching out into the community. It's very hard to reach an entire community, right? So this train the trainer encourages youth, right, to reach out. It's in rural communities especially, it's hard to bring people together unless they're already in pre-existing groups, and we worked with schools, and so youth are a pre-existing group. And I'll talk more about those 2 strategies. Next slide. Very good, thanks. The River Valley Healthy Communities Coalition is a public health organization working to achieve improvements in the quality of life in 9 northern Oxford County towns in Maine. Andover is about 800 people, Byron 120 people, Canton 1,000. The biggest town is Rumford with 6,000, and it's located on the border of Maine and Vermont. The community is 10%, the income is 10% below the state average, and 30 to 40% of children are on free and reduced lunch programs. I would say strategy number 3 is working with someone who is informed around health literacy issues and the link between literacy, language, and culture. Okay, next slide, please. The challenge this intervention was created to overcome is in one part, the low socioeconomic status and related to poor health, which is related to income and also education, low education, but also related to being in a rural community. Rural adults, young adults are particularly at risk of poor health and risky health behavior. One of the questions that community science had for me was, how did we gain access to schools so quickly? And that was, that whole collaboration piece, working with organizations, and the River Valley Healthy Communities Coalition, for example, already has trust in the community, so that was really important. And I have to just acknowledge Patty Doogie, who was the executive director at that time. She already had very strong relationships with the schools, with the public libraries. They're a community organization. The other is that the Maine Department of Education already had an objective for teachers around students learning how to acquire valid information about health issues. So this, again, curriculum wasn't an added activity for teachers. It was a curriculum that allowed them to achieve, you know, a goal or activity or expectation that they already had. And lastly, in terms of background, librarians, particularly health science librarians, like in hospitals, but public librarians also, they have a history of outreach in underserved communities. So they make a great partner for health literacy work. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to emphasize kind of what Ms. Tapias talked about in terms of the evaluation piece or the assessment piece. We started with a pre-survey just to be sure that, and I guess I would call this strategy number 5, that we really make the intervention relevant. So the health topics are topics of interest to youth. We don't have a predetermined topic. And then when the youth work with older adults and people in the community, the topic, again, that they go to search the internet for, you know, and to answer questions are questions that are particularly relevant to that older adult or those seniors. Next slide. Another important aspect of this pre-post survey is that, and these were the youth who are participating in the curriculum, is that we ask questions around the objectives of the curriculum, and we're able to kind of assess then learning gains. And a lot of interventions, we don't have evaluation or can't really say we've made a difference. So we ask youth these questions around being able to find health information, being able to evaluate, you know, how much they agree with these statements. I'm able to teach others how to use the internet to find health information, and they may say, well, you know, I don't really agree with this, but at the end we see increases that they do agree or strongly agree. Okay, next slide. So again, the curriculum is 3 lessons. It has very clear objectives. I would say another strategy is that we piloted the curriculum or developed the curriculum with local librarians and teachers. And I would suggest, as you, the participants on this webinar, if you're going to be if you'd like to use this curriculum, to pilot it first. So really your local teachers and librarians are making adaptations before they actually really use it, because it needs to be, any intervention needs to be adapted to the local needs. So that's an important strategy. Each lesson has very clear learning objectives, materials, preparation, how teachers get preparation, the exact steps that people need to follow or to implement the lesson. Next slide, please. And very specific handouts that can be copied and used, and activities. And here's an example of just some of the activities. And I think I'll just jump to the third activity. We're talking about how do you really document the impact out in the community. And this story-based evaluation form was meant to really document stories. Librarians actually use this. If someone came into the public library and used the internet to find health information, that's a real life in the community, someone actually, you know, looking for health information and using it. And those stories can be very powerful, even though there may not be a lot of them. It's a very powerful way to assess impact. Okay, next slide. This is really the activity I want to focus on. This is the project-based learning activity, and there are suggested projects for students. And the first is to teach an older adult in your family or community how to find accurate, which is correct, and reliable, trustworthy health information on the internet. You know, and then to help them find it. And the other is to design a poster to let folks know about it. You know, so designing posters and putting them up around the community just to kind of publicize reliable websites. So putting the posters in schools, public libraries, and other community locations. And this is the activity sheet that allowed students to kind of plan for that. Okay, next slide, please. These are just some pictures of a poster that was developed and put in a public library. And then this is 3 of the librarians, and they went and presented this project. I think they actually taught one of the lessons at a fair that was specifically designed for older adults. Okay, last slide. One of the lessons or the tips I want to emphasize is that websites often become inactive, and there are a number of websites listed in the curriculum, one being Medline Plus, which is a very strong and accurate and reliable website, but other websites come and go. So it's very important to check websites before you use them, and be sure that those websites are appropriate to the community. And the other is that the curriculum really should be implemented in a computer lab with live access, and that's why these collaborations with community organizations and schools or libraries, public libraries often have computer labs, adult education programs often have computer labs, schools, so that you actually have people that are doing the curriculum online. And then lastly, just to kind of review these strategies, I talked about partnering, right, with local, organizations and using pre-existing kind of channels or assets, using that train the trainer model so that you reach out into the community, working with a health literacy lens, being sure that you have a local partner that is very well trusted in the community, making sure the health information or your intervention is relevant, and then finally piloting before really implementing so that you're sure that teachers and librarians who are going to use the curriculum adapt it so that it fits their needs. And then I just invite you to contact me if you have any questions, and perhaps attend our Health Literacy Leadership Institute, which takes place in June. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Next up is Dr. Elizabeth Andrade, who is an assistant professor at the George Washington University's Milken Institute of Public Health. Dr. Andrade?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon. So I'm going to talk about the Victor and Erica web novela, which is something we created as part of the Adelante Positive Youth Development Intervention, which was part of the George Washington University Avance Center for Immigrant and Refugee Health. Next slide. So the web series was created using the novela format. And in the series, it portrays the lives of two youth living in a community just outside of Washington, D.C. And in the series, the characters take us through the struggles that youth in this community tend to face, demonstrating common risks they would encounter and how the youth navigated these risks in a format that made it possible for anyone, no matter their level of health literacy or of literacy, could observe and learn through these protagonists. So the series was a tool to promote youth engagement and disseminate prevention messages. Youth were involved in co-creating the scenarios, the scripts, and were also actors in the videos. They also helped us to disseminate the videos through their digital social networks. The overall goal was to engage the youth in our program messages in the Adelante brand, and what the program represents in a way that was appealing to them and accessible to a large portion of the population. Next slide. So we were already implementing the overall Adelante intervention when we decided to pursue the creation of the web novela series for a number of reasons. Some of the main reasons were we had an overwhelming demand for our program, but we were unable to reach as many youth in the community as we would have liked, given limits in numbers of staff. Youth also tended to be more socially isolated. Some of them were recent immigrants and didn't know a lot of people, and they had varying levels of literacy and language preferences, and like most youth, showed an overwhelming preference for video format and engaging with others online. So by implementing a digital outreach and engagement strategy, it helped us to reach more youth with information, resources, and enabled us to connect them socially to their peers as well as supportive adults. It also offered a more engaging format to reach youth in an entertaining way, no matter their level of health literacy, in a way that we thought we could not only grab but keep their attention. And as I'll discuss in a minute, the the creation of the series was very participatory, and so it allowed youth to learn through participating and not just through reading traditional texts or informational pamphlets. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the web novela creation was very participatory in nature. Youth would help out to create the series, and they benefited from this approach greatly. It allowed opportunities for them to think critically about social issues, and also to create a series that was created by youth just like them, who understood their needs and their preferences. So we did do formative research to develop the initial characters, and then we had an ongoing after-school program where youth would come and learn about filmmaking, learn about how to write scripts, and we would spend time role-playing and developing these ideas, and then ultimately filming each segment of the series during a weekend's time with very limited resources. And during the days, we wouldn't need lighting, and we would partner with local businesses and organizations to use their space for filming or collaborate with local celebrities. So we're going to show you a brief clip from the series. Next slide. So as I mentioned, Victor and Erica are a couple, and in this part of the series, as I mentioned, the program is a prevention program around the issues of sexual risk, interpersonal violence, and substance use, which tend to co-occur. And so in this part of the series, Erica discovers that she's pregnant from an encounter with her ex-boyfriend, Ricardo, while they were at a party and under the influence of alcohol. So the encounter had resulted in this pregnancy, and which is something she only recently discovered. Erica's sister, who is supporting Erica, sees who she thinks is Ricardo standing outside of the health clinic where Erica is currently receiving health services and counseling for the pregnancy. She mistakes this person, Fabio, for Ricardo and decides to confront him. And that's where we are in the series for this clip.
¿De qué estás hablando? What are you talking about? Erika, ¿no te acuerdas de ella? Who's Erica? ¿Cómo tú fuiste con ella? Dale para acá, en esa fiesta. What party are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not Ricardo, I'm Fabio. You think it's there?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, so you didn't hear about this.
I know I am. She'll love it.
Yo, what the hell just happened, man? I just got attacked by hey, man, your sister. She was saying stuff about you raped someone. I don't know what you did. What are you talking about? Yo, she came after me. She got me out against the wall and stuff. Yo, yeah, that's not true. That's a lie. What is this? I don't know, man. You gotta fix this stuff. Did you say Erica's sister? I don't know. Yeah, her. What the hell, dog? You gotta fix it, man.
What the hell are you even doing here?
Bobby told me what happened. This is just crazy. Why did she attack my brother?
Why do you think? She didn't go to it for no reason.
What do you mean?
You know what you did. I'm talking about that night at that party.
I don't remember what happened. What are you talking about?
So now you're gonna act stupid? You know what you did. You had sex with me and now I'm pregnant.
If you're pregnant, it can't be mine. You're with Victor now.
I haven't done anything with Victor and everyone knows that. I went to the doctor and I'm 9 weeks pregnant.
Whatever, that's not my kid.
You know, I spoke with my counselor and she said what you did to me is considered rape. You know what? I can press charges on you.
you serious? We were drinking. I thought you wanted to have sex too.
Yeah, we were drunk. How can I tell you no? I told you before we even started, before we went to that party, I didn't want to have sex.
Okay, how about Victor? If this is true, we should be together.
I haven't even told him. What do you mean we haven't even talked in so long?
I love you, Erica, and I think we should still be together.
This is too much for me. You need to leave. I haven't even told my parents about this.
I don't want to go to jail. Please, Erica, give me another chance. Let's be together. Forget about Victor.
So if you are interested in watching the full series, and you might be able to hear or see it a little bit, or I know there's some delays with the timing of the film and some audio issues, but the link is provided in the slides to watch the trailer or watch the full 6-part series. So some tips and lessons learned that I would provide for creating the web novela is to definitely, just as with any similar program, is to conduct formative research with your audience and really understand what they want to see in characters and what types of features should be included in the series. And to also create real-world, skills building opportunities for the youth who participate in the creation of this series. So it's more than just, a fun activity. It's something that can really instill, leadership and self-confidence, and also build useful skills for the future. I would also explore additional ways you can engage audiences in a number of different formats in discussing topics that they had questions about, or topics they learned in the series. So that could be either digitally or in person. And not to forget that young people really want to have fun. And the more engaging you can make it, and the more appealing, the better. And what we discovered is that, youth didn't always want to talk about such serious topics. So it's important to mix serious content with some lighter and fun content as well. Other tips would be considering the sustainability of characters, given that they are youth, and that they have a lot of competing priorities at that age, to create the novela in such a way that if you were to lose one of your main characters to more demanding schoolwork or other activities, that the series could continue regardless. I would also suggest that it be part of an extension of the program, and also an extension of their own lives, because these youth who are portrayed in the series become representatives of the brand, of the program, and of the messages that are being promoted in the series. So it's important for them to strive to set examples for these things in their real lives, because they are interacting with their audience on a daily basis in school and around their community. Since we were targeting this community-specific audience. The only other suggestion I would make is, because the focus is reaching audiences that tend to have challenges in accessing traditional health promotion programs, I would also be very cognizant of the language. We did actually create the series to be accessible to both English and Spanish dominant groups, and I would encourage other implementers, similar programs, to also very carefully consider their language approach to make it accessible, since that is the whole point of this type of series, is it can reach people with lower literacy. So that's all I have to cover today, and I'd be glad to accept questions or connect with you outside of the webinar. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrade. And I wanted to thank all of our presenters, and we really hope that the information was helpful to everyone. Sometimes we just read about interventions and strategies, and here we wanted to demonstrate what they look like. So before we get to your questions, I just wanted to point out a few cross-cutting themes and strategies that our presenters touched upon. So for the common challenges, communicating, relevance of the information, it applies to you. Urgency, being able to, through emotion, through the web novela, show that there is an urgency to the information that is being communicated, that they need to act upon it. The modality in which the information is being presented to the participants. So not providing them with a 2-page pamphlet when they're not even going to read it, they're just going to toss it aside and just keep on moving and along doing their work and not being covered for accidents. Running across these 3 strategies are also budget constraints. Nobody really said it, but all of these strategies were conceived with the budget in mind. And especially when you're trying to reach those who are difficult to reach in rural populations. How do you do it with a limited budget? Getting buy-in from community members. We heard that theme come up quite a bit. And then I just mentioned it, accessing the target population in rural settings when they are geographically isolated. That comes up a few times. So another part of our reflection on this is that what we kept on hearing is that you need to keep things fun and engaging. So Dr. Andrade mentioned, that the youth want to have fun. I just want to add and counter that so do adults. But a strategy here, a common strategy, is keeping things fun and engaging. So whether you're dealing with adults or children, you're more likely to get your key health messages across if you engage your audience in a way that is meaningful or memorable to them. Ms. Tapia used drama to convey the message that this information is, it's for you. You have to act on it. It's really not a suggestion. There are action steps associated with this information that I'm sharing with you. There are real consequences to not following through on what we are recommending that you need to do. Communicating that sense of urgency is really important and can be done via a drama. You didn't get to hear all of Ms. Tapia's tactics, but she also uses games and songs to get her points across. So we'll wait on that for another webinar. Another common strategy here is that cultural competence is very important when designing a health literacy intervention, and that cultural competence goes beyond just language. Is your message authentic to your audience? Does the format resonate with them? Does it incorporate key issues and values that are important to community members? You heard how the web novella used student actors from the target population to convey the message. This level of authenticity is needed to be credible and for it to inspire action or behavior change. Ms. Tapia also co-produces the skits with the farm workers. And my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Ms. Tapia, but the farm workers also do some of the acting. I think that's accurate. Another key strategy is worrying about dissemination early on is very important. There are no interventions that have unlimited budgets. We are all constrained by our budgets. You heard about the intergenerational train-the-trainer approach and how that strategy allowed Ms. Kurtz-Rossi to eventually reach adults in a rural population. She was able to leverage access to students, which is really important. You also heard from Dr. Andrade how to develop key messages with student actors and disseminating that information via YouTube. That's a cost-saving strategy. So all these strategies have the common objective of stretching your intervention's dollar. Finally, knowing the community where you're implementing your intervention also is very important. Knowing what issues they are most interested in, and especially what other interventions have been tried, is really important information to capture before you begin your work, so that you are not duplicating any efforts or can piggyback and expand on existing efforts. That's a strategy that has been used as well. Finally, focusing on building trust in the community. You have heard about co-producing materials, providing incentives for students to act in a web novella, or engaging them in other activities can buy you a lot of credibility within the community. Also thinking of what you can leave back with the community after the intervention is ended, other than improvements in health literacy. Hiring and training community members is a strategy that can have great returns on your investment. So with that, we're going to switch over to answering your questions. Dr. Lindsay Bynum from Community Science will be reading your questions, and our presenters will be responding to them. So Lindsay, do you want to read some of those? Okay. So one question is, what is the alternative to the web novella? What does the web novella accomplish that other modes of communicating is not able to accomplish? Why is the web novella, what's the value add of the web novella? So Elizabeth, that one's for you.
Yeah, sure. So, as maybe many of you know, the web novella the novella format has a lot of applications, and the web novella is really just one of them. There is, TV, the telenovela, or the radio novela, photonovela, which is kind of more like a comic strip series. There's a lot of different ways you can apply this approach. But many of them, I guess, really speak to the need for a few different things. One would be that it's visually engaging and entertaining in some way, so it's a form of entertainment education. And another one is that it draws on some of these elements of traditional storytelling, that people are going to be engaged in and kind of pulled into what you're saying because you're telling them a story. And it has roots in this tradition that many people are familiar with. So it's a familiar thing, it's an entertaining thing, and it also, it's an alternative to reading. It's an alternative to doing something as in an individual basis. It's more as if you're interacting with the characters in the screen instead of just doing an individual activity where you're reading on your own. So it doesn't require those kinds of skills. And it's also, I guess, the last thing that I would say that it offers is that, a lot of behavioral theories and a lot of research, shows that people learn a lot by observing others. And this novella format offers that exact thing, that viewers can learn vicariously through the mistakes of others without having to make the mistakes themselves. They can learn about risk, they can learn about solutions without ever having to experience that risk. So they learn by observing. They learn by watching scenarios that they can identify with. So I would say there's lots of benefits that this offers that I guess other formats don't. The thing about web novellas that the last thing is that the youth that we were working with in our program, are very, very interested in watching videos and going to YouTube and in connecting with their friends on social media and, seeing themselves in videos. They were really interested in that. And so you have to, listen to your audience and do what they're really interested in. And so we tried out this format, and it was definitely successful for them and for us for achieving our objectives.
Another question for Dr. Andrade. What is the age range of young adults in your project?
Yeah, so our project focused mostly on adolescents ages 12 to 17, so more or less high school age. But this approach could potentially work for younger populations if they had access to the different formats for disseminating the novela. You could also show the novela in, in a classroom setting or, with parental supervision if they don't have that kind of access. And this is an application that has been used with all ages, not just youth. So I do want to just highlight that.
Thank you, Dr. Andrade. This question is for Ms. Tapia. How long were your sessions and how many weeks was it ongoing, and who was invited to the sessions?
The sessions are about 90 minutes long, and we have them going for the entire agricultural season. So it's 5 lessons. So we do one every 2 weeks with the follow-up, and it's been very helpful.
And who was invited? Were there family members invited in addition to the workers themselves?
We right now mainly working with H2A workers. So we go to camps where there's only single men, or well, not single men, but they're here by themselves. And those are the ones that face the main barriers of transportation and language and everything, because they go and come back from Mexico every year.
Another question for Ms. Tapia. How labor intensive was it to develop those skits?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How labor intensive was it to develop the skits? Was it a lot of time and effort to do so, or was it fairly easy to do?
It is very easy to do. Once we assess the situation at the camps, once we get in to find out what they're interested in, what information they need, we just start the skit. And half the time, with the engaging conversation and the discussion groups, half the time the workers will complete and they will get involved, and that's how we come with the scripture. It's really hard to act it up in paper because sometimes even the sound of the ambulance is a volunteer. There's the sound of the telephone is a volunteer. The brakes of the car is a volunteer. So the guys, either they're very bored or they're very entertained, but we get a lot of participation during the activities.
Okay, this next question for Sabrina. If you can speak to the train the trainer model. We know that you pilot tested the model, but can you talk about what the value add was of adopting it? Do you think you would have been able to reach the community, the adult community members, if you didn't adopt that model?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, the train the trainer model has a number of advantages. The first is this: when you teach other people what you've learned, it reinforces the learning. So it's very powerful as a teaching tool in itself. And then it does many of the things that you've already mentioned in terms of reaching out into the community and being cost effective. I had mentioned earlier that it's very hard to get people together, especially in rural communities, to come together for a special event. And I think, it also applies in urban areas as well. It's much easier to work with a group of people that are together and then see those people as kind of change agents in the community. And this intervention happens to be with young adults, so really building the health literacy skills of young people in the community, and then reaching out into the community. And some communities, really, that intergenerational piece is very, very powerful. And that was the case in Maine. There are a lot of older adults. So there's a lot of encouragement of young people to helping older adults. So it really does, you know, kind of reinforce and health literacy skills within the community, right? Because those young people have those skills. It's not just presenting information. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I believe that it does. We also wanted to put out just a discussion question, and people can chime in either using the hand raising feature or through the chat. We have a fair amount of diversity in the group today. So healthcare providers have signed up, academics, federal and state government think tanks and consultants. We wanted to put out there, what are some other key challenges that people have experienced when implementing health literacy interventions? Well, people are thinking. We actually do have more questions coming in. So this is also for Ms. Kurtz-Rotze. It's interesting to see that most health topics your participants were interested in discussing were chronic health conditions like arthritis and diabetes. Did many of the participants have chronic health conditions? If so, are there any plans to incorporate some self-management strategies for managing those conditions or prevention to conditions?
Yes, so thank you again for the question. I actually have another, to answer your first question, then I can answer this question. One of the additional challenges I have found in a number of my health literacy interventions is, you know, follow-up. You know, very hard to reach people multiple times, especially with that evaluation piece. So, you know, these lessons are also standalone because, I mean, in a school, you really have access to folks over time, but that's a challenge that I've experienced. So, and then to answer your question, yes, chronic diseases, you know, is really a serious problem in Maine. I would say with adults, diabetes and cancer are, you know, two of you know, the real problems that people are living with. So, and at the state level, there's some strong work going on, especially around diabetes. I think Maine is one of 12, you know, state pilot sites through the CDC around a comprehensive community diabetes management program.
Thank you. And I wanted to open it back up to the larger discussion of what kinds of challenges audience members, people who are signing into the webinar, have experienced when implementing health literacy interventions. Let's say about half of you noted in registration that you had implemented some sort of health literacy intervention. So the time to share. Or what sort of, how might you adapt some of the things that you've heard for your audiences? Who are talking, we can't hear you, so either use the chat or raise your hand and we can acknowledge you or unmute you. Would you, Dominas, I think that is how, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly. Would you like, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Hello?
Oh, yes?
Yep, there you are.
Hi. Good.
You want to ask your question?
Oh, no, I guess I was typing up some challenges with implementing health literacy interventions.
Go for it.
Was I've done some work with youth and young adults with intellectual disabilities and promoting healthy lifestyles. And I've done some work with their family, but a challenge that I've encountered a lot is figuring out a way how to communicate healthy lifestyles, ingraining healthy habits and routines into their daily life, but communicating that effectively in order for them to carry that out in daily life. And so some ways that we've figured out how to do that is through pictures, or even some I think role playing, or even providing stories. I think stories of people that are just like them. We work with underserved Latino communities, and so introducing stories of children that are similar to them, and sharing how those same strategies and has been effective. And I think a great way to also include the family, as we've been able to implement our own intervention. But that's just some couple thoughts that I had about that.
Do you think this kit would? Sorry. So did you know about skits? Do you think it could be, or theater-based interventions? Do you think that might be something that could work with the population you work with?
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely would like to learn more about it. This is the first time that I've heard about specific skits. I've heard of the telenovelas before, but in terms of using it with youth and young adults, I think this is definitely a great strategy. And some of our program participants, they are kind of the leaders within the group. They take charge, they take initiative to talk about some of these topics during our intervention. So it would be interesting to present this to them and see what their thoughts are. Some of them are artistic, and so I think I'll definitely present this to the team and just gather their thoughts. But yeah, I really appreciate learning about this.
Great. I'm so glad that was so helpful. Any other challenges or specific populations that you have ideas about how you might implement or adapt some of these practices to your work?
Other challenges, I think I would have to agree with what was mentioned before, is follow-up seems to be very difficult, especially with individuals. So some of my work also surrounds individuals with diabetes, and specifically low-income Latinos with diabetes. And part of the challenge is getting them, getting them into the sessions. So getting them to either the clinic, or getting them to the church where I usually see them, or getting them to a library. Getting them there because many of them have, multiple jobs. They have, they're caregivers. And so I think that's one of the biggest barriers and challenges that I've encountered as a researcher. And we try to maneuver and think of new ideas, but it's definitely something that's just been difficult to navigate. And so I'm wondering if anyone here has any ideas on this, on follow-up.
Thank you so much. Any other ideas, both the follow-up that Delmina was just discussing, or any of the other presenters?
Actually, the program that we have, that is healthy foods for diabetics, many of the education that our coworkers do with them is popular education, and the discussion groups, the assessment, and everything else on the slide number 4 that I showed you, it works for them too. We have had cases that their AC1 has been on 13.0, and at the end of their sessions, it has gone down to 6.4, 6.8. So using this and the follow-up, teaching them with popular education how to use their glucose check and what type of diet to have and all that, it works great with the same strategy that we're doing for the health insurance.
This is
Okay.
Sabrina. One of the things I do in terms of evaluation is I do a pre-post evaluation immediately with the same people right there before teaching and then after teaching. So that's one way, but that's immediate. And then I had mentioned the story-based evaluation form, which does reach out into the community and can happen follow up. You don't get a lot of them, but they can be very powerful in terms of making the case. But you're talking about, chronic disease intervention. And I guess I would reinforce the idea of working with pre-existing groups. So if people go to church every Sunday, they're already getting together, and that would be a good place to meet with people, or working with new parents who are getting together on a weekly basis with, a parenting group, or a monthly basis. They're already getting together for another purpose, and that would be helpful for following the same group of people. Just a couple of ideas and suggestions.
We have a couple minutes for a few more questions. I also wanted to throw out to the group, both the presenters and the rest of the attendees, stretching that dollar is a big one. Additional suggestions on when you have a tight budget or people are socially isolated, you want to get to a larger community. Any additional challenges or tips from the presenters or others on just the practicality of budgetary constraints?
This is Sabrina. I guess I'll just say that's what the power of health literacy intervention. It's not just giving information, but it's really building people's skills. So, we're not going to always be getting the funding over a long period of time, or we have limited funding. But if we can really help build people's skills, they can apply those skills over periods of time and share them, with others. So that's always my goal. And you're, leaving the community with improved skills and ability to take action post an intervention.
Great.
This is Naisley. I have a suggestion, and I don't know if this will be a good place to bring it up, but I don't know if you ever heard of the FNEP program that they do on hands practice for nutrition and how to use your money for your food, how to do a proper budget. And many organizations have partnered with the FNEP program to serve the low-income population, and that's been very helpful also.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, well, we are right at time. Our time is up, and I would really like to thank all of you for participating in the webinar, and especially to our presenters for sharing their knowledge, to community science staff, Lindsay Bynum and Maria Mata, who worked very hard to bring us together today. If we were not able to address your questions, if you think of something else, please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is going to come up in the next slide. We've been recording the webinar, and we're going to be posting it on our website so we can share with you all the location of that. And finally, as we end the session, you're going to be receiving a link to a brief webinar assessment questionnaire. We urge you to please complete it. It's important for us to know how you experienced today's webinar speaking with us. And it's very quick, it's painless, just a few items, and we would really appreciate it. Thanks again, and have a great remainder of your day.